UX design and education have direct connections with one another, especially when we are talking about online instructional content. These are things that I have learned about UX design and the benefits that I believe all teachers can utilize from. And we're going to go over this in this video. But first, what we really must consider is what is UX design. If you're a beginner like me that had no clue what this is, then you are wondering, what's UX? UX, or user experience, is how the user is interacting with an app or, let's say, a website. So for example is, how was your experience shopping online at Target? Was the website or the app easy to use? Were there things that you were struggling with while using that interface? Well, that is user experience. So user experience, behind the scenes, there's a whole group of people whose sole job is to make sure that your or the user's experience is effective and, well, good. So wouldn't you say that as a teacher, we do so many things behind the scenes for our students and their experience in their learning and creative process in the classroom? So really, how does this relate to teachers? Simple answer to this is UX is all about the user. So think about your users or your students. Your students are consistently interacting and learning from instructional online content, or even online content that you're using in a face-to-face classroom setting. So the question is, how has that been going for them? Not so great, could be better. So if we go over some tips, you can give your users or your students the best experience possible. And to understand more about UX and education and how they're connected, I formulated the following tips from Joel Marsh's UX for Beginners book. It's a great, fun, comical read, and I highly recommend that you check it out. So to begin, we really have to understand what the UX design process is, because you may have been like me, you have no idea what this is. This is a process that UX designers go through. And teachers do actually the exact same thing. It's very similar. The first step is simply your users and students. You must consider your users and students first. So what are their goals? What are their challenges or things that they are struggling with? We also call this pain points in UX design. What are their personas or their background of the students? So if you consider all those three things, those are things that should help guide you design your actual content and create it. So it's essentially step 2, the initial layout or the online instructional content that you are designing in mind with everything from step 1. And then finally step 3 is, testing and developing it. The users test it, and you want to ask your students and let them give you feedback. How did everything go? You fix those changes, and then hopefully the next time around that your students use it, it's a much better experience. So that process can be used for anything that you design, and really the goal of UX design is to make users effective. So I think as teachers, we can argue that the goal of a lesson or instructional online content is to make students effective. However, sometimes this really falls short. We start designing way too soon, we get too excited, and we forget crucial steps in the process, and that's our students. It always goes back to our students or the users. You could be assuming that they know things they haven't learned yet, or they know how to do something when really they don't, or the instructions are not clear and they're not direct. All of this can be avoided if we use the UX design process when we are designing our instructional or lesson plans and designing the content. So this is formulated from Joel Marsh. He covers 3 very basic tips, 3 good things that all designs have that can be directly related into your instructional content, and it stems from UX design. So the first one is essentially, what is this? Oftentimes we give our students assignments or activities and with vague information, and they're just like, what is this? I'm sure you've been on a website where you are asking, what is this website about? It's the same thing. So the first tip is, make sure you just tell your students in very simple ways what exactly this is. Because if your students don't even know what they're doing, you can imagine how quickly disengaged they will become. So the second one is, what's the benefit, or really what's in it for our student? How do we keep them engaged? How do we keep them motivated? And a tip here is to show them. Show them what they will learn in the end. So things like instructional videos, finished products. Make sure your design of your actual pages or the instructional content is simple, not too much text. Engaging videos, engaging images. This will hook them and give them the why behind what they're learning, and they will be much more motivated. And the last is a very odd one that I think teachers don't think about, is what should they do next? How many times have we had students that state, I don't know what to do next, or where do I click? Teachers oftentimes don't think of this as a crucial step in the process, but it really is. So because of this, our instructional content, it falls flat because our students are literally getting stuck and they don't know what to do next. So this final tip is, make sure when you're designing your online instructional content, the next steps are very clear and direct. So they know they have to click the big blue button that says next page, and it's very obvious. So keep your designs very simple, contrasting designs with very clear instructions and steps so they know where to go next, so they don't get stuck and then simply give up. That is not what we want to have happen. So to sum this up, really, if they don't understand, then that's your fault. I know as a teacher that's very hard to hear, but it's true. Oftentimes our students are not understanding, especially in the online instructional content, simply because their experience was very poor and the design was poor, and they got easily frustrated, and therefore they just gave up before even trying to learn. Think about yourself. How many times have you given up because the design was poor and you just wanted to not visit that website, for example, anymore? It's the same thing for our students. So if your instructional design and the content, if you consider the users before, if you make sure it's a simple design with engaging content and the students can easily navigate it, they know exactly where to go next, then you have done your job right. And that's what you want. I hope you have learned the connection between UX design and education. And really, if you apply that process and those tips, you will see a huge improvement and a world of a difference of the experience that your students are having in the classroom and with the content. Thank you for joining.